Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Janice, the Boundary Coach, and today's Boundary Spotlight is all about transition and uncertainty. Today I'm talking to a lovely woman about how that pertains to being on the job, but more importantly, what are the boundaries that she had and what are the boundaries that she's putting in place because of the transition, because of the uncertainty. I thought it'd be a really good idea to talk to someone who is still on the job, who has their job blessedly, but how that affects the people who are left when their friends are gone, when their colleagues that they actually got along with are gone, and how their job shifts. I hope you enjoy our interview, and I'll be back at the end.
Hello, I'm Adrianne. I have previously been in the early talent space for about 3 years, maybe a little bit more. And in that space, I built out programs for those who are early in their career and made sure they had incredible experience as they transitioned to the workforce. I recently pivoted into the people experience world. So now I've kind of expanded outside of just early talent and more into the entire company organization, which has been exciting and thrilling and fun. I primarily focus on our employees' onboarding experience. And let's see what else. I am a mom of a toddler boy who keeps me on my feet. But yeah, so that offers a whole bunch of new challenges being a working mom, but so far it's been great.
So the reason why I really wanted to talk to you today, Adrianne, is really talking about how your position has changed or may have transitioned because of the transitions within your company. And this is a bigger conversation that I want to have about how boundaries affect those who are left in the transition and the ones that are left, which are you and other people like you. How does that feel, and how the boundaries, because this is the boundaries channel, how does that really apply to your daily life? So I appreciate you being here, and I want to talk to you more about that.
It's really layered, like you feel this sense of gratitude to still be in a job that you love, and you care about, but you also kind of feel this heavy weight. The people you work with, are a big part of your life. You're with them more than you're with your family. So when they're not there, it's hard. It's heavy. And I think it's two things, right? Like you feel this like intense gratitude, but then you also feel like a little bit of sadness. And it's surreal, kind of continuing forward while people you care about are navigating change. I felt really fortunate, because I had my new manager really gave me a lot of space to process and adjust. And I think working in a place that allows you that support really makes a big difference.
Oh, I'm sure. Was, without going into detail, of course, was the transition something you saw coming, or was it something completely out of the blue?
I did not. Um, but in my career, it's happened to me a couple times. Both I had no clue, but I'm not like a stranger to being to huge changes and big pivots.
Sure.
So, but no, I did not see it coming. And I'm sure it's designed that way, right?
Right, right. Because if they would tell you this is the 1960s, that
Yeah.
2 weeks from now, don't you're both having
Yeah.
a job, but here's your bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I'm sure. And just to tell our audiences, you work in like a Silicon Valley space, like you work in
Mhm.
tech.
Right. So it's very
So
common in
yes.
tech. Happens a lot, unfortunately, but there's
Mhm.
lots of changes, for business needs, and it's just a part of the industry, I
Yeah.
guess. It's
I'm
just not fun, the worst part, for sure.
Of course, of course. Was the conversation different once your friends, your coworkers were gone? Like how did people talk about the transition?
I think it was hard on everyone, you
Yeah.
know. I'm fortunate to work for a very human company,
Hmm.
meaning we work with a lot of human people, right? And so it was it was really hard on everyone. However, you know, everybody who was impacted definitely had an incredible positive attitude on like, you know, this is just kind of how it goes and on to the next. So that was encouraging to hear. But yeah, those who were still, you know, at the company, I think they were just trying their best to navigate.
Did you have to put in boundaries when you heard, or even after, not when it was happening, like the aftermath? Did you have to like say, okay, so this is what I got to do first and foremost, even if it was just one boundary that you had to
Yeah,
think of?
I did. I had some events, external events planned, and it's not really in my nature to say, you know, I don't know if I can do it, but I had to really think through how I'm showing up for myself and how I'm showing up for the company that I'm representing and how I'm showing up for the attendees. And I really had to acknowledge that in that moment, I couldn't do it. And I wasn't the person that needed to be in that space. Um, so I had a conversation with leadership to explain why I didn't feel comfortable
Mm.
attending that event with everything kind of happening and just processing. So that was something I normally would never do. Um, but I really needed to think through like how I was gonna show up and how I was gonna represent the company and how I was gonna give my attention to those attendees and what they deserved. Thankfully, the conversation with leadership was very understanding. Um, and so we decided to pivot and skip the event, um, which I was thankful for.
Yeah, I think that's really great to hear that you put your peace of mind and your energy first because you stuck up for yourself, which is what boundaries is all about. And when you just said that, I was like, whoa, that's very self aware to say that. Yeah, I think that's very, and I think that's great. I think my audience needs to hear that too, how you can do that too. So I think that's really great.
I mean, there is a little bit of privilege in that, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
being able to feel like you can, I mean, even though it was really hard and something I normally wouldn't have done, I think that it's important to acknowledge not everybody has that privilege and
Oh,
the
no.
space, the safety to be able to speak up that way. So I definitely acknowledge that.
Yeah, and it is too, but then also, um, the privilege is it's not for me. It's not so much. I understand what you're saying. Of course, I understand what you're saying. But standing up for yourself, really self-aware has nothing to do with privilege.
Right. Hmm.
It's hey, I don't feel this way. Now, the action of being able to say, hey, I can't do this and actually say it outside out loud and have that support. Yes, of course.
Absolutely.
That's yeah. But to step back and say, "Hey, I can't do this to myself because nobody is letting you do or not do to you know to yourself." So
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge that
Okay.
that's important.
Yeah.
That's self awareness that no one can give you or take away. So
Yeah,
good.
self-awareness is huge for
Yes,
sure.
even in the moment,
Yeah.
it's really great. I think that's really great. What changed for your position? I know you say you went from early talent to now you're in people. Did the roles? I mean, of course, the role changed, but were are there certain aspects of the job that you're like, this is not what I did in early talent, and how was the adjustment to that?
I think almost everything was
Hmm.
different.
Oh, really?
You know, I felt I worked within a program that was very much built out. And I had a lot of space to build programs really intentionally and really think through long-term impact. And I think when you're going through change like that, everything shifts, and that really like long runway you have to work on things kind of goes away. And it just like, let's just pivot, let's just fix the chaos, let's just make sure we're stable. And then also on top of that, I knew nothing about this world. So
Mhm.
I had to make sure things were kind of operating at least okay. And then I also had to learn. Um, so that was all very different. I also felt really confident in my last role within the early talent space. You know, I'd been doing it for a while, so I had a lot of confidence behind me. Um, but I really had to forget about the lack of confidence I had, and I just had to get comfortable asking questions. Even though I really didn't know what I didn't know. Like
Yeah.
I don't really know about this, but I still have to like really deeply understand this new role that I'm in. And I think it actually ended up being a great thing for the team because I
Mm.
came into this role with a new perspective, right? I didn't know anything. So sometimes I would ask people like, why are we doing things this way? And they would just be like, well, because we always do it. I don't know, but like we've just always done it this way. And so it was kind of exciting to think through like I could rebuild new
Mm.
processes and improve them.
Mm.
Um, and so that was kind of thrilling, and it still is. Like I'm still growing a lot. It's
Good.
still very new to me. Um, but it is exciting to kind of go into something and say like, okay, maybe this isn't working. Like let's think through this more. Um, so there was a lot of changes for
Yeah.
me personally. I went from
Yeah.
being very confident in a space I felt like really knew and had a good grasp on, and then kind of just pushed into a world I knew nothing about.
Right. Was there a boundary that you had even with that? Because everybody should have that in the job that you really loved. And then the next position you of course you had it, but you had to tweak it to make it even more make it work for you even more. Was there something that you can remember that you did have that an example for that?
I actually think I had less boundaries
Hmm.
before. So I think this transition kind of really forced me to think through my boundaries.
Mm.
And so from a boundaries perspective, it really did change, but in a positive way, I think. I think that's when I was like, okay, I have to think about this.
Mm.
Um, I was spending a lot of time thinking about work. I was going home and thinking about conversations I had and like how to just keep moving and going and looking at Slacks while I was playing with my son.
Mm.
Um, but I really did, once I like reflected on it, I felt a little bit more empowered after the transition because I felt like the business trusted my ability to solve problems.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that confidence also shifted something for me. But I really wanted to be intentional about how I spent my time. Like I didn't want to just like keep working and overextending
Right.
myself just because things felt uncertain. Um, so I was trying to really think through like intentionality with my time, and thinking through like where was I actually adding value, or was I just like overworking to like win some burnout award?
Right. That you'll never get.
I'll never get. Yeah.
And you don't want, actually.
Totally. You think it's like in the moment, you think it's
Okay.
like this badge of honor, but it's really not.
No, it's not. Nobody wants the burnout award. I'm gonna use that now. Nobody wants the burnout award.
Nobody wants it.
Um, that's also too like just because you love your position or love your job before doesn't sometimes you love it so much that you don't have boundaries because it's just freedom.
I think that's probably what was happening was, there was this layer of like not wanting to disappoint,
Sure.
your team, yourself. You like the job, so you're like, oh, just keep doing it, keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also do think before, because everything was really structured, I had a very structured environment before, the boundaries were kind of already there, right?
Yeah.
Like they were already, I didn't have to put much thought into it.
Mhm.
And so when I did, it was like, oh yeah, I better fix this.
How do you know it's sustainable that you can practice every day in your new position?
That's a good question. And I think your work comes in ebbs and flows, right? Like maybe one day it's not super sustainable for me to say, I need to turn my computer off. But I think if you have that self-awareness of like, this is temporary, I need to make sure that me pushing myself out of my boundaries is just temporary. So that it's not just continuing after, said project is over. Because I do think sometimes, something, changes, you have to pivot and you're going to have to work more. I think that's just the reality of life.
Yeah.
But as long as you have like the
It's called
self-awareness,
adulting, Adrian.
right?
It's
It's not
adulting.
always going to be perfect,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But I think if you have, like you said, the self-awareness to say, like, okay, well, when is that project over? When can I go back to having space for me, to being able to balance both worlds and not feel overworked? So I think that's maybe what makes it sustainable is acknowledging that it's not always going to be perfect. You're sometimes going to have to overstep your own boundaries, but as long as you can kind of bring yourself back, then maybe that makes it a little more sustainable because you have to be realistic, right?
How do you, being a working mom, and being a young mom too, as well, how do you deal with keeping that boundary separate from work, from my home?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning. My son's only 2, so I'm a newbie mom.
He's so
Uh,
cute.
so I'm definitely still learning. But I think for a lot of women, like we're used to carrying a lot, whether, that's not just being a mom, maybe being a caregiver, just the household work,
Yeah.
family logistics. We're kind of used to like moving from one thing to the next without really stopping. And quite honestly, like we're really good at it.
Yes, we are.
But just because like we can handle everything doesn't mean that we should constantly operate like that.
Mhm.
Um, and I have to remind myself of this. And I would say I'm not very good at stopping and pausing for myself. Like I'm pretty big into like, okay, I transitioned from work to home. Like now I like to joke that I'm starting my second job when I get
Right, you
home.
are. You are.
So I have to really work on that. I think that's something that I really want to create is you feel more guilt in creating a boundary around your home life, right? Than you do maybe at work.
Yes.
Because that's the number one thing, right? For most people
Hmm.
is your family. So sometimes it makes you feel a little bit more guilty.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's important to always remember you need to ask for help, you know, give your self permission to like take
Yes.
a bath, go on a walk, do the things that you need to do to like feel like you so that you can show up.
Yes.
But I would say this is something that's definitely still in progress for me.
What is one thing that you do to protect your energy at work? At work, what do you do? What's one thing you protect your energy from?
I think again, obviously it's not always perfect, but when I leave the office, occasionally, on my commute on the BART, I'll look at Slacks. But then once I pull up to my driveway, I sometimes just leave everything like in a space that I won't even look at it. Like I'll leave it in the trunk of my car, in the garage, and it's just like not coming in with me. Like it's just like this is work, and I'm gonna create a physical space to it.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, so that's been actually really helpful. It's just that transition back into home life that I could probably be better about taking a pause, taking a beat for myself in that transition, but baby steps, right?
Yeah, baby steps. I just like that you kind of you created a space for yourself.
Yeah, I think that physical boundary really does help. Like if I brought my laptop into my bedroom where I normally work, I would feel tempted to just let me finish this one task.
Yeah.
So I think that really does help. When I think about boundaries, I think it really means to me like integrity, you know? it's not necessarily about laziness or pulling back. It's making sure that like you can truly show up and represent either yourself, the company you work for, um, in the way like it deserves, you know? And I think there's integrity in that. Is to being able to say, you know, I can't show up the way I should unless I create this boundary. And I think it builds trust too with, you know, those you work with, because you are showing up a little bit better, not burnt out. So I think that's what it means for me.
Yeah. Do you see other coworkers that may not have boundaries, and that you're now that you have something, you're like, oh, I can see you don't have it.
I do. I do see it a lot, and typically with women,
Mm-hmm.
the women that I work with, sometimes it's younger women, and I've been there before too, feeling like you have to work, you know, 60, 70 hours a week to feel valuable almost. Um, and it's hard to watch, you know, because you know yourself, you've done that too. You've been in those
Yes.
positions and
Mm-hmm.
coming out of it realizing even if you work that much, it doesn't necessarily always translate to, you know, a promotion or what you think it might translate into.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do see that. And it's really hard to watch. And I do my best to say like, well, why why are you working 60 hours a week? You
Yes.
know?
Yes.
And usually it's, you know, it's the pressure. There's so much to do. Like people are counting on me. And I totally understand that and I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's not sustainable. I would definitely ask them to like take a look at their work. Like, what are they proud of? Where's their confidence space? And if they feel like I actually do a good job and I do bring value to the workplace and I do bring value to this company, um, and maybe they just aren't used to acknowledging that about themselves, maybe they can say, if I don't work 60 hours a week, I probably won't get fired. Like, will you really get fired if you don't work 60 hours a week? And if you feel confident with the effort that you're giving, like you're clearly giving 100%. So create that boundary, see what happens. Maybe even have an honest discussion with your manager about how you're feeling and how you really need a boundary so that you can show up better. Um, it's hard though. It is really, really hard because you automatically go to like, well, they're going to think I'm lazy or they're going to think I just don't want to do the work. But it's really not about that. But I think a lot of women don't see their value until like they're kind of forced to look at it. And that's kind of like what happened with me. It was like, okay, wait, I actually do bring value to this company and I can solve problems and they do see some reason to have me here and I should feel good about that. And I can show up better if I create a boundary of not thinking about work all the time or thankfully I never worked crazy hours, but when I see it, I get really sad because it's no life to live. And there all are alternatives. Lots of opinions, strong opinions, kindness, um, and fun. But you have to have strong opinions. You have to be a little spicy sometimes.
I really enjoyed this interview, of course, but I really enjoyed it because she's very transparent about how she felt, about how she noticed how she felt, and she didn't have the solution first. She didn't have what she was going to do first. She didn't know what she was going to do first. And I really appreciated how she translated that. Yes, she's in a workspace, and at the end of the day, she doesn't own the company. She has to abide by certain rules. She has to produce the product that they're producing, they're putting out to the world. But she first had to acknowledge the feelings and not just ignore it, not just move on. And I really appreciated that. I also appreciated how she created a solution for herself. She couldn't change the what happened at the job, of course, but she could change how she dealt with it. And that's all about boundaries. We can't control the world, but we can control how we react to it. To find out more information about how you can work with me, go down to the link in my description box and you'll find out all the information. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.